Welcome to QuickShow Tutorial Chapter 5 about QuickShape. The QuickShape tool is located down here on the Quick Tools area, and to access it you just click on the tab. When you click on it, the QuickShape area will open up. Before we actually get into the QuickShape tool and how to use it, let's discuss what the QuickShape tool might be used for. Well, QuickShape could be used for one of two different kinds of images. The first kind is that beam effects are usually made up of simple images. For example, a circle will create a tunnel of light when scanned into the audience. A line creates a sheet of light scanning across the audience. To create a wave effect, what some people call liquid sky, we just take a horizontal line and add some waves to it. So one thing that QuickShape can be used for is to create images for audience scanning type of effects. But another thing that the QuickShape can be used for is to create abstract imagery. The abstract imagery that you find up here on the Abstracts 1 and Abstracts 2 tab are all made up of really simple shapes that are combined to create a more complex shape. The QuickShape tool allows you to get to the simple shapes very quickly, and those simple shapes could then be turned into more complex shapes, and we'll discuss how to do that in a little while. So basically, once again, the QuickShape can be used for essentially two different kinds of images. One is abstract imagery, and another is audience scanning or overhead beam effects. So now that you understand what QuickShape could be used for, let's talk about how it's used and the philosophy behind it. Well, the QuickShape tool is very much like the QuickText tool that we talked about in the last chapter. It has a step 1, step 2, step 3 type of philosophy. And so the first step is to choose a base shape. For example, we can choose a circle as the base shape, or a line, or a square, or various polygons here. And we can also, just like the QuickText tool, we can choose the color for that base shape. And similar to the QuickText tool, we can choose the size of that shape and the number of points in that shape. In most cases, when you have a single connected line as we do here, the number of points won't really matter all that much, but when you start getting down into the low number of points like this, you'll see that it does matter. A circle with only 5 points is really a pentagon. So another thing that you have control over with respect to the base shape is whether that shape is made up of a single connected line, as you see here, or whether the shape is made up of dots. Might be a little bit difficult to see on the video monitor here, so I'll go ahead and enable the laser output, and that works just like it does in the QuickText tool. We just say show it now, and it will automatically output that on the laser. And so, as you could see, what we can do is we can control the base shape with these buttons here. We can choose the color down in this area here. Here are the big 8, what we call the big 8 colors. They're the 8 most used colors for beam effects and to get the maximum brightness out of a laser. But you don't have to stick to just the 8 shapes, 8 colors rather. If you click on here, you can bring up the Windows dialog box and choose any color that you want, like that. So once again, the step 1 is to choose your base shape and the appearance that you want in terms of the color and whether it's made up of a single connected line or made up of dots and how many dots there are. Step 2 is to select a modifier or an effect that will be applied to that base shape. We have some built-in effects here, for example, one that will put 5 loops onto the effect. something that'll put 5 waves onto the base shape, something that'll put 10 loops. And what you'll notice is that this doesn't really look all that loopy. It looks kind of angular, and that's because at this particular moment I have very few points in the image. If I increase the number of points, I can see that it starts to round out. So again, you got kind of a step 1, step 2, step 3. You've got step 1, which is selecting your base shape and your color. Step 2, which is applying a modifier to that base shape. And step 3 being either showing it now or dragging and dropping to a queue for use later. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at the quick shape. As we've noticed, we can make the base shape out of a single connected line like this or out of points, and we can even choose how many points are used to create that image. This could be very handy for kind of liquid sky type effects that have like a line appearance, like here's 5 loops, or very common effect here for liquid sky is to make waves like that. We can make that out of dots and control how many points are in that wave effect. This is very dramatic when projecting towards you in a kind of an overhead beam effect scenario. And we can also control the speed at which these dots move around, and that's controlled here by this thing called beam speed. If we move that to the right, now you can see that the beams are moving to the right. If we move this slider to the left, the beams are moving to the left, and so forth. To get to quick settings, you'll notice that next to the word there's a little drop down arrow here. It means if I click on this, we can very quickly access common values for that particular slider. If we want to get back to a beam speed of 0 very quickly, instead of fiddling with the control here or even manually typing in a 0, what we can do is just drop down this, select a 0. So the little drop downs give you very quick access to commonly used speeds. So let's drill down here a little bit and get to actually looking at how these are made up. One of the things that you'll notice here is this little E, and that little E means Effect Editor. That same E is used over on this tab here. So, for example, while I'm clicking on this, you'll notice that the Effect Editor is actually changing. That's because the effect that is associated with each one of these settings becomes loaded into this Effect Editor tab. So what I can do now is I can actually adjust the settings for this shape while this Effect Editor tab is open. So for example, the amplitude controls how tall those waves are. Obviously the number of waves controls how many waves there are. Right now there's 5 waves. I can make a smaller number of waves like that or a greater number of waves like that. And just like in the quick shape area, we have the little down pointing arrows so that we can very quickly get to common values for this control. And the speed controls how fast, forward or backward, the shape is actually moving. And once again, to stop that, we just drop this down. You can't really see it on the screen capture, but there's a little 0 here, and I could stop that exactly. So it's very easy to create simple shapes as those that would be used for audience scanning type of effects in liquid sky, and to choose the color here. In addition, what we can do is just as we could in the text portion, we can add a more complex color effect just like this. And so when we have the color effect chosen here, we can add some additional colors in there. And even have this cycle through the image. So once we get this looking the way we want, just as we could with the text, we can either show it now or drag and drop that to a queue. Also, just like we had in the quick text, where we can just drag and drop this back down to the shape tab to edit it, we could do that same thing with the quick shape. And just as with the quick text, when we drag this downward, we have the black arrows which show us which tool should be used to edit that item. So let's get into a little bit more complex case with the quick shape and see how this could be used to make a more powerful abstract. So obviously we have the ability to control the number of points in the image, how fast those points might be moving, and whether it's a single connected line or made up of dots. So let's make a little bit more of a complex abstract. What we could do is we'll start off with a simple circle, just like this. Come over here, if you click in here, you can access the effect editor. And so what we can do is we can add an XY oscillator. That gives you loops. That's why it says loops. We'll add some more points there to make it a little bit more smooth. And I'll go ahead and show it on the laser just so we can see this while I'm building it. So we have this simple shape like this. We can control the amplitude of the loops, how many loops there are, and the speed at which they move. So this is very easy to use Abstract Generator. And what we'll do is we'll add another type of modifier here called a modulator. You can see what that's starting to do now. We can control the speed of that as well. So you start to get the idea that something that started off just as a circle, and we can have these little check marks here, what I can do is uncheck them to reduce the application of this so that these are no longer applying to the base shapes. We could take a look at this simple base shape here, and we could see the effect of each one of these by clicking on them, and we could see the combined effect by enabling both of them. So now that we have this, what I'm going to do is add a color effect. We'll have that color effect also repeating 5 times, and maybe we'll have that kind of rolling through there a little bit, maybe a little bit more slowly. And then finally what we'll do is add another kind of a color effect, but we're going to change that. I'm going to say color effect again, but this time one of the things that you'll notice when you scroll this, there are different options for the color effect. So I'm going to say that I want to affect, it's a little bit difficult to see with this screen capture software, but I'm going to tell it that I want to affect the brightness, not the color, and that I want it to do something called discretely, and unfortunately in this screen capture software you can't see it, but all the way down here there's something called discrete. And what that does is it makes it so that we're not going to go through shades of something, but it's going to be a much more dramatic effect. I'll change this to black and white. So now what we have is this particular color effect is basically blacking out the color or allowing the color with full brightness. So now what we can do is we can change the speed of that, and you can see we have this kind of chasing effect, and the number of repeats is the number of times it's going to repeat this black and white combination. So we can also repeat that 5 times, and now we have something that looks like what we call a symmetry type pattern. So we take something very simple like the circle, and just by adding oscillators and modulators, we can make this really much more complex. Each one of these effects has controls down here that will control exactly what happens, including, in the case of this modulator here, the options, whether it's a modulating with a sine wave, triangle wave, a square wave. You can see now it's modulating with a square wave. It's a little bit more dramatic. And even something way down here that you can't quite see in the screen capture software called invert. So now we can kind of invert the sense of the modulation, which obviously gives it a completely different view. Slow that down a little bit here, maybe. And this one as well. Just come back to 0 on that. And likewise with the colors, we'll go a little bit more slowly with that. And as you can see, basically what we could do is we can kind of go on and on and on. Once we get this looking the way we want, you simply show it now, as we have been, or drag and drop it to a queue for access later on. As we start off with something as boring as a circle and make a pretty dramatic symmetry pattern here. Just like the text editor, where we can edit this just by dragging and dropping, another way that we can edit it, when you have an abstract that's made up of the quick text or the quick shape, as we do in this case, if you right click it, you'll have this menu here that says edit abstract. So we can click on that and come up with the full abstract generator, sort of like how we took quick text and we right click and we say edit, and then we come up to the advanced text editor. When you right click on a quick shape and edit it, you'll come up with the advanced abstract generator, where and this is basically the same thing. If we take a look at this quick shape, you have your base shape here, and whether it's made up of a connected line or dots, and the effect over here. Well, in the same way, the actual advanced abstract generator is just kind of like a bigger way of looking at this. It's a bit more convenient, because instead of having to move all the way across the screen and have to deal with a smaller, compact view of this effect editor over here, the abstract generator has everything just kind of spread out a bit more, so it's a bit more convenient to work with. And just like all the other tools, we could show it now. We could also choose the zone where we're going to show it. So, for example, I show it in that secondary graphic zone. That's in the upper left-hand corner. You show it in the atmospheric effects zone. Show it sort of like, gives it a view as though it's coming towards us. So that's pretty much it for quick shape. There's not too much to it. Basically, step 1, step 2, step 3, just like the text. We pick a base shape, a color, whether it's made of a connective line or dots. Choose a modifier, show it now, or drag and drop it to a queue. And sort of like the text editor, each one of these can be edited by right-clicking, and we can also add a new item, just like we did with the quick text. So, for example, if I click on this, say Add New Item, And I can come in here and I can say, well, what I really want to do is add horizontal oscillator with 10 waves. And okay, so I just add that, and just like the text, I can right click, rename it, say 10 horizontal waves. And it's there anytime I need it. So you can add your own kind of library of quick shape, quick modifiers. Get it looking the way you want. Just drag and drop it to a queue.